Although during World War I and World War II, women weren't mobilised to fight on the front line, over 1.5 million were conscripted into another vital industry, armaments. Keeping up a supply of weapons which were urgently needed by the troops in the field. Aircraft production in particular became vitally important, and the supply of one groundbreaking plane, the Lancaster, would play a critical role in the entire direction of the war.
Quite wonderful to see the sight of it, wonderful.
Edwards come to the Lincolnshire Aviation Heritage Centre to find out what part women played in building the Lancaster.
Just the concept of the brain that dreamed that up for the first time, utterly amazing and brilliant. It's also, in its own curious way, it's tremendously beautiful. Just the whole skillfulness of it is beautiful. But to think what it was meant for.
The arrival of the Lancaster in 1941 came just in the nick of time. After a disastrous start to the war, the RAF urgently needed a new breed of heavy bomber.
The Lancaster, often called the Queen of the Skies, was fast, it could carry a high bomb load, and it was very versatile. It could carry a bouncing bomb, for example, and the air crews were certainly appreciative of its abilities to evade combat.
As the aerial war intensified, demand for Lancasters increased exponentially, putting greater pressure on the women workers who made them.
In February 1942, a new commander, Sir Arthur Harris, takes up command of Bomber Command. And there is a real shift in the emphasis and the escalation of the strategic bomber offensive against Germany. Of course, they needed more aircraft, and that placed demands on the industry. So everybody in the nation who was involved in the production of these aircraft took on that responsibility. The people who were making the aircraft, the women in the factories, on the production lines that were doing the riveting, that were putting the engines together, they were giving these airmen the opportunity to shift the air battle over Germany. The role that the women played in the production of the Avro Lancaster was vital. They ensured that 7,377 of these aircraft were manufactured and could reach the operational squadrons.
92-year-old Joan Ray was one of those women. During the war, she worked in a factory in Doncaster, riveting side panels for the Lancasters.
It's an extraordinary sight, isn't it?
It is,
Joan?
it's so big.
It's so big.
Yes.
And yet when
And
you...
it's not so big inside for people to sit in.
No,
Because
no.
all down the middle it was where the bombs were, wasn't it?
Yes. And very uncomfortable once you got in there, and very cold too. That's a very good photograph of girls' work, because that could have been you, couldn't it, really? When you were doing the riveting, what did it entail and how did you do it?
Well, we had to go and pick these panels up and put them on a stand.
Yep.
And then you had to drill the holes in the panels. And then there was two of you. One put the rivets in, and at the other side of the panel, the other lady would be knocking them down.
Over 12 hours in a day, too.
Yeah, some days, yes.
Did you feel that the work you were doing for the war effort was vitally important?
Yeah, because we had friends that we went to school with and everything that were in the war and they didn't come back.
Exactly.
And ladies working with me, their husbands and that didn't come. And yeah, it was very sad, and we knew how serious it was to what job we were doing, yes.
And that everything that you and all the girls did was contributing in its own way to winning the war.
Yeah, yeah.
That was the feeling, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
of course, yes.
Alongside riveting, women operated heavy machinery and pressed and hammered parts, freeing many thousands of men for frontline duties. To show Joan just how vital her contribution was, Edward has brought her to meet Rusty Warman, a pilot who flew one of the planes Joan helped to build.
The intelligence officer would point out these areas which are defensive areas which we had to avoid.
This is the first time Rusty's had the opportunity to meet one of the women who built the Lancasters.
I believe you were involved with aeroplanes building the aeroplanes during the war. Was it a big factory?
Yes.
So what bits were you playing with?
The side panels. I was a riveter on them.
Were you riveting, were you?
Yes.
That's amazing.
Well, a lot of us were only young girls, 17 and a half.
Oh, I was an old man. I was 20.
I was, yeah.
The general public these days have no idea what went on in getting these aircraft built and getting these aircraft ready. And if it wasn't for people like you doing what the job that you did, and so reliably, we as aircrew couldn't have flown.
No.
You know, so your job was really just as vital as anybody else's. Realising just what you did for us flying, people like flying, not me personally. There's a little something which you may have dozens of these, but I hope you perhaps like it. It's
lovely, thank you.
That's lovely, yeah.
The Lancaster bombers that women, like Joan, carefully assembled on the factory floor took on a life of their own once in the skies. And Rusty's keen to show Edward what being on board one was like.
And those little windows there, you could look into the bomb doors and see if your bombs had fallen.
Yeah.
One thing you don't get is that sort of atmosphere. It's very difficult to put over what it was like. As a crew on the operations, you've got about 60% normal flying, about 40% panic. And some raids, when it was a lot like when you're in high adrenaline rate all the time, you can get the impression of the noise, and you can get the impression of the speed, and you get the impression of the appearance. But one thing you don't get is the smell. Because when you were flying through a box barrage of anti-aircraft fire, you could smell all the cordite.
Wow.
Of the 125,000 crew who flew in operations for Bomber Command during the war, 55,000 were killed, many of them in Lancasters.
When you first started on operations, you realised people were killed. You said, poor soul, this sort of thing. But later on, it happened so often, you just accepted the fact that people were going to be killed.
Yeah.
And you didn't expect to live yourself.
No,
Yeah.
no.
I was given a talk to a school one day, and one of the little girls said, "How many dead bodies did you see?" Well, we didn't see dead bodies. No. All we saw were empty beds.
It's been a completely fascinating day being here, but meeting Joan, 17 and a half years of age, she was on an assembly line, and Rusty. I mean, talking to Rusty is just wonderful. But as he also was saying, the air crews would never have had aeroplanes to fly unless they'd been made, and they were put together panel by panel, rivet by rivet, mostly by women, or in a large majority by women. It was very important and very crucial to the war effort and to winning the war. So I've had a wonderful day. Wonderful day. I mean, two wonderful people.